All right, after you've finished gridding your piece of paper and you've gridded your picture, we can start drawing. I do want to show you an optional step that I find extremely helpful. I actually label the top row and the first column with letters and numbers, and then I do the same on this picture. This just helps me find my spot when I start the drawing, and it helps me to make sure I'm not in the wrong square. You don't have to do this step, but if you find that that'll be something helpful for you, you can edit your picture on your computer to be able to add text to it like this, okay? Notice that, you can't really see it on the screen, let me show you. This picture ends at 15, and my grid ends with 15. That's awesome. I do have this like little extra bit here, but I can just ignore that, that's a really small piece. But here you'll see my letter ends in W, which is the 23rd letter, and my piece of paper ends at V. So my picture actually has more rows than my piece of paper. So what you're gonna have to do is, if you find yourself in this position, it's a pretty simple fix. Basically, I'm just not gonna draw this last row. I'm just gonna end it at V. I'll just pretend like that's not there, and I'll end at V so that it matches my paper. Okay, so if you have a similar situation where you have more here than here, you just have to sort of kind of cross it out and just draw the parts that fit on the paper. Okay, so I'm going to reposition this so that you can see more closely the details that I'm drawing. I would start by drawing some of the larger shapes within the portrait. You are actually drawing each individual line separately. I know that sounds really daunting and really overwhelming, but if you just kind of ignore the rest of it and focus on one little area, eventually this will go a lot quicker and it won't seem so overwhelming, okay? So I'm gonna start by just drawing a large shape, or maybe like one of these little weird looking islands. Let me find my spot and then I'll zoom into that so you can see it more clearly. So this is G9. Let me see, G9. So I'm gonna put a little dot there so I don't lose my spot. And then I'll kind of zoom in. We can see that area a little bit better. Okay, so this is G9, G9. This is G9 right there. I do like to put a dot in the center when I find my spot. That way I don't lose it. And then also the dot in the middle helps me figure out where these lines belong. So for example, if I'm starting with this line right here, I can see that it's below the dot and to the right of it. So I'm going to put it, I'm gonna kind of give myself a guide where that line should go. This is really similar to the upside down drawings we did in 6th grade. This is basically a much more elaborate version of the upside down drawing. You're still just drawing one line at a time. You're still measuring with your eyes and figuring out the proportions, you know, where this line is supposed to be compared to the dot, where it's supposed to be compared to this line, so on and so forth. So just forget that it's a face and focus on just the individual shapes and lines that you're supposed to draw. All right, so there's a little bump right there. And I'm gonna put a dot in this square as well. That's H10, just across from it, so that I can figure out where this white shape belongs. So it looks like it's right around, that curve goes right there, and then it hooks back up to the original line. And it looks like it ends a little past the halfway mark right there. So I'm gonna give myself a guide there too. Okay, so that's the white shape, right? It doesn't look like a whole lot. It doesn't look, you can't really tell what it is. Once I draw all of these shapes and lines in, it'll look a lot like a globby map or something like that. It won't really look human for a while until you start shading it in. You can go and just outline every single shape individually and then go back and shade it in with your pencil. If you are using your own paint, outline everything like this first and then paint it later. But most of us are just using a regular pencil. And I would start with the darker shapes and color those in, and then work your way up to the lighter shapes. So I'm gonna leave this one. This was good practice, but maybe I'll move on to something that's a little bit darker, like this part of Mr. B's mustache. So let me move my screen. This is M6. I'm gonna put a dot there. Let me find M6 is right here, all the way at the bottom. Okay, I'm gonna adjust. So you can see everything at once. All right, so this is M6 right there. And this sort of curved triangular shape is what I'm looking for. So it goes above the dot. You guys probably on the camera can't see the dot, but I can see the glare of the lead from the pencil in the sunlight. And it's right there. Then the curve ends right about here. And I am gonna make sure I have some of these little bumps because it is hair and I want it to look like hair. If I make it too smooth, it won't look natural. So you can see how I'm giving myself a guide. Okay, and then I can connect those dots. And this is completely black. So what I can do right now, while I'm drawing, I can go in and shade as I draw. Either method works. So you can outline everything first. You can outline every single line first and then go back and shade it later, or you can shade as you go. If you're gonna shade as you go, you have to make sure that you're being consistent with the different values. So I would maybe start with all of the black ones and then all of the dark gray ones and then all of the medium gray ones, so they're all consistent shades. So this is just black, so I'm just really making it solid. I find this project to be easier if you use a number 2 pencil instead of a mechanical pencil. The shading in goes a lot faster with a number 2 pencil. Okay, then I would draw this little black spot right here, which looks like it's right next to it. There's my dot, put the dot in the middle, and my black spot is right there. Color it in, and so on and so forth. One shape at a time, one shade at a time, until you're finished. Okay, so that's how I would start the project. I do want to show you how I would tackle some detailed areas. For example, when you're working on the eye, the lips and the nose, but mainly the eyes, those are really, really important to get accurately. If you're off by even like 2 millimeters, it won't look like your person. So for the eyes, what I like to do is I do put the dot in the middle, but if that's not enough, I actually do an X from corner to corner. Keep your lines really straight. Okay, this is I-10. Let me find my spot on the paper. You can see why the letters and numbers are helpful. So I is right there, 10 right there. I'm gonna put a dot so I don't lose my spot. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit more. All right, so this is the square where the eye is supposed to be. And I'm going to match that X. Draw these guiding lines very lightly because you'll probably end up having to draw over them or erase them in the end or color over them. And I don't want it to be visible underneath my drawing. Okay, so now that I have an X, it just gives me more areas to compare where some of these lines are supposed to go. So I'm gonna start with the darkest shades, which looks like this main part of his eye. Actually, this and this are 2 different shades, so I'm gonna split those up. This part of the eye goes on a diagonal right above the center intersection. And then it goes down on a diagonal. I'll put a dot here too so I can make sure my proportions are right. Okay. Okay, I'm working on this part right here, and I'm measuring with my eyes how far away it is from the edge of the grid and where it is compared to my X. So it looks like it's above the line right here. Okay, and then it goes all the way out to here. It almost touches the line, and it goes pretty far up. So this spot would be, yeah, right about there. Okay, so that's my really, really dark gray. Inside of that dark gray, I do have some shapes. I have the black shape that looks like it's right here. I'm gonna color that in solid black. Then I have a white shape that I'm going to leave alone. I have another white shape that I'm going to leave alone. And if I look very, very closely, I can actually see a shape underneath it that's like a medium gray. So I will add that in as well. Okay, so this is solid. This is really dark. And then I'm going to make sure what I shade around it is dark, but not quite as dark. So shade as you go, and this will help you keep your spot, hopefully. Okay. I know this video is pretty long. You can fast forward or pause whenever you feel necessary. And then these two shapes are a little bit lighter. So I'm like barely coloring that in because I want those to appear ever so slightly lighter. Okay. And after that, this shade is slightly lighter than this one. So I would go in and now draw this. Notice how the eye is blending into the eyebrow. Draw it that way. That's how it's supposed to look. Even though it feels wrong, like it shouldn't do that, even though it feels like you should just end the eye on its own, don't. Draw exactly what you see on this picture here. Okay, so I'm gonna put the dot in the middle. Dot in the middle. And this gray ends right there. And it doesn't go back to the eye, it keeps going up here, so I'm gonna follow it. Goes into the eyebrow, just go with it. And then it goes back down. I have to put a dot up here to make sure I don't make it too big or too small. So right around there. It goes over here, back into this box, and then back into the eye. And then I would keep going and finish off the dark shadows right here. So work your way out from where you are and be careful that you're keeping the shades consistent. So every shade that's supposed to be this light gray, try to keep it the same value and not press too hard or too little. Okay, so you can see it looks really weird. It's not done yet, but once I get all of those shapes and shadows in there, it will look exactly like Mr. B. Okay, hope that helps. Good luck.